Welcome back to the broadcast, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us through that 3-minute break. I'm so excited right now. I can't even contain myself, ladies and gentlemen. We've got an amazing guest here lined up. For those of you guys who don't know, Mr. Gerald Celente, he founded the TrendsResearchInstitute back in 1980. He's also the author of a couple of national bestsellers. One was Trends 2000. The other one is Trend Tracking, Far Better Than the Megatrends. And he's also the publisher of the internationally distributed quarterly TrendsJournal, which I cannot recommend highly enough. Prior to founding the Institute, Gcelente was a government affairs specialist and an executive assistant to the Secretary of the New York State Senate. He earned an honorary doctorate degree in law from the National University of Health Sciences and a master in public administration from the West University of Virginia there. Also, for more than 3 decades, Gerald Celente has built his reputation as a fearless teller of the truth, an accurate forecaster, and an analyst whose expertise crosses many arenas from economics to politics, from health to science, and more. And most important, Gerald Celente is a pure political atheist. He is unencumbered by political dogma, rigid ideology, or conventional wisdom. His motto is one that I can absolutely agree with. Think for yourself, ladies and gentlemen. He observes and analyzes the current events from future, and he forms future trends, seeing them for what they are, not as what he would like them to be. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome the one and only Gerald Celente to the program. Gerald, thank you so much for joining us on Red Pill Reports today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Oh man, I gotta tell you, as a side note, I'm an absolute huge fan, and I'm absolutely looking forward to picking your brain a little bit today. And I know you only have a short amount of time, and I just want to thank you again for taking some time out of your schedule. I guess right now, since you are kind of the guru of trends forecasting, in terms of geopolitics and economics, we should probably look at the largest geopolitical and economic ball of wax that's on the horizon right now. All eyes, to me, are on Greece. What in the world is going to happen in Greece, in your opinion, sir?
Well, Greece is a big one, but it's not the biggest in the sense that it has economic implications, but they're really, it's the canary in the mine shaft, so to speak. Mm-hmm. We don't get the news here in the States of what's going on with the discontent among people in their countries that have been robbed of their money under the name of austerity measures, mm-hmm. and given to banks and the big investors who made bad bets. That's all it was. Ireland, Portugal, Spain, one after another. They were forced to bail out people who made bad bets. And, of course, they always blame, well, it's these social programs. These workers are getting too much. So we're going to cut back on their wages, and we're going to cut back on their pensions and benefits, and their disability and their retirement benefits till after they die. Then they could start getting their benefits. So what's going on in Greece? There'll probably be some kind of an agreement, but the bigger story is that it's showing the weakness of the Eurozone and the Euro itself. When people go back, if they knew the story of what happened and why so many people really went on to the game of the Euro, it was because, Europe was racked by war between the First World War and the Second World War, and they were sold the bill of goods that by having a united currency, you wouldn't have wars. And that's why so many people went with it. And I know I was there. I spent, time. I had a lot of friends there. And I knew the culture of what was going on. And really all it was is a takeover. It's the multinationals grabbing their action a lot easier by dealing with one currency and one set of rules, so they could do a lot more grand manipulations at a much easier level. So Greece is probably, they'll cut a deal. I really don't think it, and I can be wrong, of course, I don't know. I don't have the inside knowledge. But from what I'm reading and what I'm looking at, I believe they'll cut some kind of a deal. And they'll make it work. The Syriza party isn't as radical as they're presenting it to be.
Okay.
Because if it was, he would be saying that we want to jump out of the euro. The euro is a disaster for us, and we don't want any part of it. And by the way, that deal was manipulated through the Goldman Sachs gang. And the guy that was the head of the European division at that time that pushed it through, his name is Mario Draghi. That's when they brought Greece in. Greece wasn't qualified economically to go into the Eurozone, so they cooked the books.
Ah, okay.
And the guy that did the book cooking, his name is Mario Draghi, and of course he's the president now of the European Central Bank. Mm-hmm. So Greece, everyone knew that Greece was not qualified to go in. So they lied their way into going into becoming a member of the euro currency. So that, to me, if Syriza was really true to their word, they would drop out and say, listen, we're just not paying you. And that's the end of the game, man. You know, we're defaulting on the payment. We can't pay it back. We're going back to our own currency. Mm-hmm. See you later. And actually now they're also pushing for war reparations that Germany owes mm-hmm. them. And also that they were forced to give Germany a loan during World War II. So, and they want their money back. So we'll see where it goes, but to me the big ones, of course, are also Ukraine.
Yes.
And the United States move into it. And again, the news is being totally skewed to make it seem like Russia was behind this whole thing, when in fact anybody that wants to take the time to do the research, besides reading our TrendsJournal, which we have it all documented, all they have to do is go on YouTube and listen to Victoria Nuland, our Assistant Secretary of State,
right,
whose husband is Robert Kagan, who's the prime slime of that neocon movement. And and there she is on the they picked up her phone call with Jeffrey Pyatt, our ambassador to Ukraine, and talking about the overthrow of the Yanukovych government and how they're going to put, quote, Yats in there. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, there's her at the National Press Club in December 2013, with flanked by two signs, one Chevron, one Exxon.
Right. That had to be a coincidence, right? Though.
Yeah, right. and of course, and telling actually with the arrogance that Ukrainians are Europeans, and that's their future.
Right.
That's news to a lot of the Russian Europeans, and I think the place borders Russia, if I'm not mistaken.
I saw that in a pamphlet once, I think. Yeah.
You did, huh? Yeah. and of course the issue that doesn't make the news is that Joseph Biden's son, Hunter, yes. I Love Coke Biden, is on the board of directors of Burisma Energy, the largest energy company in Ukraine, as well as Devon Archer, who's the business partner of John Kerry, Secretary of State Kerry's stepson, Christopher Hines, of the 57 variety kind. He's also on the board of directors of Burisma Energy. So the people don't know what's going on, and they're buying the propaganda. Mm-hmm. And the propaganda is really building up. We're now bombing Syria. Remember Obama said, we're not going back into Iraq. We're just going there to save them Yazidis on the mountain. Right. And everybody knows what a Yazidi is. You got them living all over the neighborhood, you know.
Yeah.
And people bought it. And, of course, they didn't put troops back. They put advisors.
That's right. Well-armed advisors.
Well-armed advisors. And I'm a guy that's old enough. I was draft bait during the Vietnam War. And that's what they called them back then.
Right.
Advisors. And I have to tell you, this sickness, it's a mental disease as I've been thinking about it, this penchant for war. It never stops. Mm-mm. Like what happened, we did a piece with this Brian Williams and how he's been prosecuted by fellow prostitutes. And you know, here this guy's playing G.I. Joe and makes up this story about war, and it's always glorifying the guys that saved them, and, you know, this whiter than white, golly gee whiz guy, right. You could trust me. And all they're doing is selling war. And we pointed out in detail how a book came out in 2008 by Scott McClellan, who was the former press secretary under George Bush. The name of the book is What Happened, and how he goes in detail how they pressured the media to buy the lies, and how the media bought them and sold them. And it's quotes from Brian Williams, Katie Couric, Janice Yellen, or Jessica Yellen, Charlie Gibson, one after another, saying that they were pressured by the White House, and and they're corporate bosses.
Yeah. Well, it's not surprising, really. I mean, fundamentally.
But it's there.
Mm-hmm.
It's there. And no one wants to admit to it.
I find it interesting that that Williams has taken so much heat over lying about Iraq, while at the same time nobody's looking at Bush or Cheney or Rumsfeld or Condoleezza Rice or, you know, like we've got some pretty other significant liars in the room that maybe we should be pointing our fingers at as well. No, we're just going to totally, you know, lambast Williams. I mean, he's a prostitute. What do we expect him to do? You know what I mean? That was almost his job. I don't know. I'm not surprised by it at all.
Oh, no, not at all. But what we're saying is, and the point of the piece is, it's going back to the beginning of this conversation about geopolitics, where they're leading us to war again. We're only getting one side, and they keep rolling out the same old flunkies to throw out their crap.
Right.
Like this guy Emerson, the guy that said, you know, in there's cities in England that you can't go in because they're Muslim.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know, I wrote in my book Trends Trends 2000. I had just been going through it a little while ago, and this little Slimer did the same deal when the Oklahoma City bombing happened.
Oh, you're joking.
No, here, I got it right here, actually. Here we go. Hours after the bomb went off, CBS Evening News featured Stephen Emerson, a ubiquitous terrorism expert, who eagerly presented his bias as objective analysis. He goes, this is quote, "This was done with the intent to inflict as many casualties as possible." He's talking about Oklahoma City.
Right.
That is a Middle Eastern trait.
Wow.
How's that for hatred, you little son of a...
Right.
Yeah. How's that, you little low-life little piece of crap of a man?
Wow.
You know that, don't you, that killing a lot of people, that's a Middle Eastern trait. And we all know that, and I guess the Israelis picked up on it too, because they did a great job in Gaza.
That's right.
Being down in the Middle East, they only killed 2,100. That hardly makes the news. And how about the Americans? I guess from bombing people in the Middle East, they picked up those Middle East traits that little lowlife Emerson was talking about. They only killed about 1 million over there in Iraq. Hey, how about Afghanistan? Another lovely day.
Right.
Look at Libya, our humanitarian mission launched by the Peace Prize winner, the Pulitzer Peace Prize winner, or piece of crap that launched a war, Obama, against a sovereign nation that did nothing to us.
That's right.
And killed an estimated 30,000 people and has now destabilized the entire region.
Mm-hmm. And how many of those destabilized regions had banking systems that were not affiliated with the Rothschild dynasty before all of this went down? You got it. And the Gaddafi was the biggest one. That's right. That's right. Wasn't he trying to go back to a partial gold standard as well? Yes, he was. Okay. Yep. I want to talk a little bit, Gerald, about anything that you might know that's going on kind of behind the scenes right now. I've been hearing these reports coming out from the IMF about something that they're calling a Plan B. I know that there were a whole bunch of people, as far as I can tell, meeting in Turkey yesterday. Was at the G20 going on in Turkey. Is that significant, the meeting of Turkey, while these countries are potentially thinking about changing their currency standards and things like that? What do you think's going on? What's happening is that many countries, for two reasons. Some countries are going to negative interest rates like Denmark, mm-hmm. and they're doing it to protect their currency because the euro is getting battered so badly because Mario Draghi, again, launched the quantitative easing, which is a scam that only boosts the equity markets. And in anticipation of the Draghi who said he was going to do quantitative easing, now you're looking at the European equity markets at 7-year highs. When they did it over in Japan, they have a different name for quantitative easing. I think the Japanese name is Abenomics. and they got their equity markets have gone up 57%. Oh, wow. When the United States launched quantitative easing in 2009, our equity markets went from essentially 8,000
It's about 18,000 now. Now, this is at a time when you go back to all of those countries that I mentioned in the regions where the standard of living has dramatically declined among we the little people, while the equity markets have flourished. And you see the numbers. I'm not making them up. The Oxfam report that just came out. Next year, 1% of the people will own 99% of all the dough in the world.
That's just insane. I mean, it's just insane. It's like this criminal cabal has reached the pinnacle of criminal cabalness, you know?
We've never seen anything like this in modern history.
Right.
This is unprecedented. And the people keep taking it and bending over and bowing down. And so anyway, going back to the meeting in Turkey, in Istanbul, about the interest rate issue, that's on one end, the people and the Swiss trying to protect their currency. The other ones are lowering interest rates in hopes that by having a weak currency, their exporters, and the same thing also with Denmark, of course, they have to keep their currency low because their exporters won't be able to sell their stuff if your currency is so high. But that's not going to work if people aren't buying stuff.
Right.
So what they're doing is they're grasping for straws. They don't know what they're doing, and that is not this is not a speculation. The proof is in the biggest central bank in the world. The United States did not know what it was doing when the panic of '08 hit. And you don't have to believe me. All you have to do is read a review of the minutes, salient points of them, and you can see they didn't know it was coming down, didn't believe it was going to happen, and denied it when it did happen. So these aren't bright people. They're shrewd people.
Okay. They're
slimy people.
Right.
But they're not bright. You know, a murderer could really be really great at doing, murder. But that doesn't make them a bright person. And these people are doing murder in a different way. It's murder, rape of our lives and livelihoods so they could pump up their buddies. Because one of the trends, just wrote briefly in the current TrendsJournal, the top one is the grand manipulation. And that, of course, is written by Dr. Paul Craig Roberts for us, who's the former Assistant Treasury Secretary under Reagan, and about how this whole thing is being manipulated at all the different levels, the geopolitical level we were talking about and the financial level. And another one trend we're writing about is bankism. And that was written by Nomi Prinz for us, who wrote the book, All the President's Bankers. This is not capitalism.
No.
It's bankism, because in capitalism, there's no such words as too big to fail. And when you put bankism and grand manipulation together, what you have is fascism. And that's what's happened. It's the merger of state and corporate powers.
Yes, to an extent that I don't think we've ever seen before. I mean, the system's got to fail at this point. There's been so much robbery and collusion. It's insane. I mean, just look at the mortgage crisis scandal and the MERS institution and the seed company. I mean, just about everybody's mortgage in the country right now is potentially had the chain of title broken. These derivatives that they've leveraged out of the mortgages here. I mean, they're stories that are under the radar here that are just so large that I don't think anybody even wants to talk about them, because the propensity to just blow this whole thing wide open, I think, is coming down. I'm guessing, here's my question then, I guess, Gerald, is are we going to see more of these kind of surprise announcements from different central banks, the surprise unpeggings and things like that? Are we starting to see infighting going on between the central banks as everybody is kind of jostling for position?
I don't see any infighting right now.
Okay.
Because they're all in the same game and they all know the deal. When you go back over 2014, for example, and you look at the amount of downgrades on world economic growth for 2015 that came from either the IMF or the World Bank, one organization after another on a global scale, said, hey, things aren't good here. So they know how bad it is. And they're mostly in collusion to make this thing work. And when I say they, I mean, the puppet states of America.
Okay.
And so they're really working tightly to make this thing happen. I'll give you an example. You had, when the markets were in trouble, back in last quarter of 2014, and they started to unravel when the Federal Reserve finally ended its official quantitative easing, right?
Mm-hmm.
They ended, the markets are really plummeting. They ended on a Wednesday. All of a sudden on Friday, over in Japan, they come out with round 2 of Abenomics. Out of nowhere. This is after the first round of Abenomics, just a month prior for the third quarter results, showed a 7.2% decrease in their gross domestic product. This is after a year of Abenomics, and now they doubled down on it.
Right.
But when you look behind what they did, they took the pension funds, the Japanese pension funds, the public funds, and rather than just buying Japanese bonds, what they noted in this massive bailout to the equivalent would be of the United States pumping in $3 trillion a year compared to comparative GDPs from the Federal Reserve, the Bank of Japan's. What they announced was they're going to also invest in stock markets, both national and international. And then you saw the stock markets explode again.
Right.
So when I talk about the collusion, now they're all in it together.
Okay. Well, then I have to ask about the other player that's come on the scene recently, and that would be the BRICS organizations. Now, how are these two? Because I'm with you, I think that there's obviously collusion going on between the Bretton Woods stuff and the BRICS Bank. But do you see them working together? Are they all trying to work towards the same goal here, or how is BRICS going to play into this?
I don't think BRICS is going to have the power to make a difference.
Really? Okay.
Because when you look at the countries, with Brazil, let's take that one. They're in a recession.
Mm-hmm.
They're way down because of the other BRIC, and that's China, one of the other BRICs. And here's the equation. It's a very simple one. If the United States and Europe aren't buying things, China's not making them. And if China's not making them, Brazil, Chile, Australia, Canada, Bolivia, all of the Russia, all of the rich natural resource nations are selling less of their product. So people say, this decline in oil prices, that was something that happened because they wanted to punish Putin.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's take a look at copper prices. China consumes 40% of all the copper produced each year. Not anymore. They're in a terrible slowdown. And so this isn't about oil and Putin. It's about commodity prices. You have 5.5-year lows across the board, 5.5 to 6-year lows. You could buy a ton of iron ore, rebar, reinforcement rod as well in China for cheaper than you could buy a ton of cabbage.
Really?
Yes, there's too much supply and not enough demand. So when you're looking at the BRICS, you keep going through them. So you have Brazil, Russia, China. We just hit those, right?
Mm-hmm.
And India. India is always a toss-up. And India's not going to go anywhere if people aren't buying stuff and they're not making stuff. So, and again, of course, the other sideline they have is all of these call centers and anything that the United States could outsource to them for cheaper money, for cheaper help.
Right.
I love getting these calls. Oh, hello, this is Rajesh from Citibank. Yeah, hi there, Rajesh. How you doing?
Yeah.
So if we're not exporting jobs or services there, they're not going to do well. They're always a toss-up, and they're protecting the rupiah as well. And then the other BRIC is they just threw the S on there, and that's South Africa. And they're not going to be much of anything, any place, anywhere. Of the many countries I've gone to, there are very nice spots around it, but yeah, it's not one of the places I like going back,
Right.
It's an anything goes at a lot of times. I don't see wealth and prosperity around the corner there.
Okay.
So you don't have a lot of strength among the BRICS. As much as they want to pull it off, they may be able to be eroding slowly at the United States as a world reserve currency. And indeed, it has declined already from about 80% to some 60%. Mm-hmm. But you look at trade in the yuan, for example, the Chinese currency, it's like that 2.5%, 3% on a global basis.
Okay.
So it's very low. And so, but at some point, of course, it will change. But right now, it's in a transition period. And people should really tune into China and see what's going on there. You know, there's outflows of capital in China, and all the smart money's leaving there. I mean, they're buying up the rest of the world.
I'll tell you, they're soaking up Bitcoin like nobody. If you go to fiatleak.com, you can watch Bitcoin purchases in real time. And China, I'll tell you what, they buy more Bitcoin than it's staggering sometimes to just sit and watch the flow of Bitcoin going into China right now. Anyway, we've got to take a quick 3-minute break, Gerald. I hope you can hang on for just a few minutes past this break. I want to encourage everyone to go to TrendsJournal.com and subscribe to his newsletter. You get a quarterly newsletter. It's fantastic information. You'll get more of what we're experiencing right now with the one and only Gerald Celente. We've got to go to a 3-minute break, guys. We will be right back. Keep it right here.
Chris and Sheree Geo here, founders of Truth Frequency Radio. We just wanted to take a moment to thank all of you for making TFR the biggest and the best independent radio station out there.
When we first entered the alternative media scene in 2009, we were really taken aback by the amount of infighting, backbiting, fear-based reporting, and ego-driven personalities. That's when we knew we had to set ourselves apart and set a new standard in broadcasting. And thus, TFR was conceived as a listener-supported station with no corporate or outside influence and limited commercial interruptions.
You can support our efforts by signing up for a VIP membership at truthfrequencyradio.com/signup or by making a donation at truthfrequencyradio.com/donate.
For less than $4 a month, you can ensure that TFR continues broadcasting for years to come. Real people, real radio.
Wherever you are, make it TFR. Did you know that the blue lotus flower was used by the ancient Egyptians as an aphrodisiac to experience feelings of euphoria and ecstasy? And ecstasy. And ecstasy. Did you know that Thai kratom was used by the Buddhist monks to produce a relaxing and dreamlike state? Did you know San Pedro cactus was used by the Native Americans to quest for visions and heal the body? Bouncing Bear Botanicals is your #1 supplier of rare and sacred plants and a proud sponsor of Truth Frequency Radio. By clicking on the banner at truthfrequencyradio.com, you can learn more about a vast selection of entheogens, including Amanita muscaria, also known as the sacred mushroom. So click on the banner at truthfrequencyradio.com, and you'll also get up to $40 off your next order.
Archaeology, astronomy, alchemy, secrets of the Holy Bible, hidden codes of the Quran, demonology, Tesla technology, solar power, extraterrestrials in the ancient world. More than 500 documentaries, an experimental film lab of cutting-edge music and art, full-length movies, conference reports, and weekly TV shows. The Enigma Channel is the world's first truly global TV station. www.enigmatv.com. Intelligent television for planet Earth.
Real people, real radio. Wherever you are, make it TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back to the broadcast. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for sticking with us through that 3-minute break. I do have the bad news that Miss Jamie Hanshaw is under the weather. She won't be able to join us today, but on a better note, Mr. Gerald Celente has volunteered to stick around for just a few extra minutes with us today, and I'll tell you what, spending 40 minutes with Gerald Celente is about as good as it gets, ladies and gentlemen. I'll tell you right now. So very thankful for him sticking around for just a few minutes. Mr. Celente, before we went to the break, we had just kind of broached the subject of oil, and I know a lot of people out there are probably just wondering what is going on with oil in terms of what the slide might have in store for us here, ramifications of that slide, here in America, and what you think might actually happen in the future going forward, since you're so involved with trends forecasting. What do we think about oil right now?
Well, we, each night, as part of a subscription to the TrendsJournal, every weekday night, we do trends in the news. Mm-hmm. And I cover oil, gold, and the markets, among other things, but every day those three fundamentals. So when oil hit its high of $115 a barrel back in June, I said, well, here it goes. Summer driving season. Boy, they're going to really ratchet it up now.
Right.
And, of course, there was the Ukraine crisis, and the Middle East was heating up again. And oil started going down. I said, what's going on here? This doesn't make sense to me. And then, of course, as Ukraine crisis kept heating up, I said, I wonder if this is payback for Putin, because 45% of Russia's GDP relies on oil and gas exports. And then as time started going by and I started looking into it deeper, our analysis is that this is a supply and demand issue. And demand is down around the world. And supply is increased at the same time. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not only in oil, it's in commodity prices from, as I said, from nickel to iron ore to copper and on and on. Mm-hmm. So now you go and bring it into the everyday life. Look at the Christmas sales they had before Christmas, 70% off. There's too much product out there. This is unprecedented. This is a new trend that started only beginning a couple of years now. Things used to go on sale after Christmas, not before Christmas. They have too much product out there. And it goes back tying in it again when you have, right here in the States, we have now the gap between the rich and the poor is the widest wider than actually during the Gilded Age.
Wow.
So people don't have the money to buy things.
Right.
And there's too much supply of product, whether it's finished product or commodity product. Now to put it back into its broader context, who else is it hurting? Well, it's hurting more than Putin. Of course, they love to see Venezuela get wrapped, and they're really getting hurt because they need oil at $115 a barrel to balance their budget. But then you look at what's going on in the States. You have some 20%. It's estimated between 15 to 20% of the junk bonds are energy related from the shale boom. You look what's going on in Canada. We're talking about low interest rates. They're playing the same game. All of a sudden, they said they weren't going to lower their interest rates. They have, because they're hoping to export more. So it's a price war. And what you have going on is that will the price of oil go back up? If there's enough cutback of supply, yes. But demand has to also increase at some level. And it's not. So this is going to knock a lot of players out of the game. But it's not going to solve the problem. Okay. And the problem is that not enough people have enough money to buy what they need because the wealth is concentrated in the hands of, it's not even the 1%, it's the 0.01%.
Right. Okay, well, I want to ask you one final question before I cut you free. I know you've got some other things to go and do, but I want to talk a little bit about the shutdown at the U.S. ports that was going on over the weekend, all the shipping, and if that is related to the Baltic Dry Index that seemed to take a pretty significant dip yesterday. Are those two things related, and are those things that you're paying attention to or that we should be paying attention to?
Well, this has been a union issue for a long time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's really what it's about. And unions in this country barely exist anymore. So in the old days, this would have been standard operating procedure. I think because only about 11% of the nation is unionized anymore,
right?
And they're very weak to begin with. So this has been an ongoing union issue, more than the Baltic Dry Index issue.
Okay. Can I ask you one other final question
Sure,
before I
sure.
let you go? I got a great one from the chat room. If you were king of the world, how would you fix all of this?
Very simple.
Yeah.
And we're going with, and what we're trying to do, and we are doing, on May 2nd, we're launching Occupy Peace.
Okay.
And it's from Kingston, New York, Colonial Kingston, from the most historic four corners in the United States. The only place where there's a pre-Revolutionary War building on each corner. And we're honoring thy founding fathers, who among them, beginning with Washington, no foreign entanglements. Now remember, this is coming out of the mouth of George Washington.
Mm-hmm.
This is a real commander-in-chief, not these little boys that drive pickup trucks, play golf, shoot pool, and play basketball. This is the real guy.
Right.
And he said in his farewell address, no foreign entanglements. Now, the world was at war back then. I hate when people say, man, it was a lot different back then. No, it wasn't. And not only Washington, but Franklin and Adams and Jefferson, one after another. No foreign entanglements. So how do we fix it? Bring home the troops. And every country abide by the same principles. Mind your own business. You have your own problems to fix. This has nothing to do with fixing people's problems. It has to do with fixing the mental disorder of psychopaths and sociopaths that get off on tragedies and murder.
Yes.
And no one wants to call them what they are. Instead, they call them presidents, chancellors, and prime ministers, bow down, suck up, and roll out a red carpet and lick their feet and kiss their ring when they arrive. So that's number one. And the second part of it is self-sustaining economies. And that means putting back up tariffs and putting back in regulations that would dismantled and dismembered to create the multinational one world order, which, by the way, you're also seeing taking form with the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Transatlantic Investment Partnership.
Yes.
They make up these BS words so you can't remember them, and they have nothing to do with trade. They have to do with multinationals having supreme law over sovereign nations, just to make it straight and get past the rest of the baloney. So, the second part of it is, if I were king, and to quote Mel Brooks, hey, it's great to be king. The other part would be self-sustaining economies. We don't have to deal with China. We don't have to deal. If I want to buy something, I'll buy prosciutto and Parmesan from Italy, you know.
Right, yeah.
I'll buy great wines from France. I like them better than California wines. You know, but we can make our own shirts, our own shoes, our own computers. We need self-sustaining economies. And most of the bigger nations are capable of doing that. And it goes back, by the way, and if anybody wants more information, not only do we have the TrendsJournal, we have conferences here as well, and we just had one in December. And we launched our top trends of 2015. I'm mentioning that because also, as the energy prices are going down, there's growth in now alternative energies.
Yes.
And as we're seeing them, they're not alternative anymore. They're going to become dominant. From Julius Caesar to Grover Cleveland, the world's leaders went to their inaugurations and coronations in horse and carriage. When the automobile came out, it was alternative transportation.
Right.
And that's where we're going to see fossil fuels go, the way of the horse and buggy. Candle power to electric. So then it goes back to, if I were king, you're going to have alternative energies that are going to be dominant energies. That means, do you think that what you want to see a disgusting freak show of sociopaths, psychopaths, and lowlifes. All you had to do was watch them go over there, from President Obama to Cameron, you name them, all over the world, past secretaries of state and current ones, going over to kiss the ring of the new king of Saudi Arabia.
Yes. Yep.
And everybody gets tight when ISIS cuts a couple of heads off. What did they already the new king's whacked off 3.
Oh,
and
no,
he just
6. I think we're at 6 now.
I lost count. Thank you for, 87 last year, right?
That's right, yes.
And so anyway, you think that they would be over there if Saudi Arabia's major export was broccoli?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. Well,
King of what? Where's Saudi Arabia? Is that some place? The people would know where the joint was if they didn't have oil. So it goes back that the future is in our hands. What could be greater than peace? It's so easy to get people to go to war and have young men believing in the baloney and putting their lives on the line and losing them. Mm-hmm. One of the major stories that should be in the media each day are the 22 veterans that are committing suicide on average each day.
The ones who are successful. There's 54 additional ones that are not successful in that same attempt. I
didn't know that.
Yeah,
how terrible.
It's a huge number, yeah.
And so how easy it is to get them to go to war. And how difficult it is. And how tiny the stage, if any at all, to speak about peace.
That's right.
What a mental sickness that has taken over the world. Hey, all those pharma guys and vaccination freaks, how about a vaccination to stop these people from their these psychopathic tendencies and sociopathic ailments that are leading the world to disaster? How about a vaccination against war?
Well, I'm substantially anti-vaccination, but I would absolutely support one like that. I mean, these people they're hanging their hat on the ideas of scarcity and competition, and that's what we see, the lies of scarcity and competition being, prevalent throughout the world, and then they're seeking profit, which is not really a real thing if the money is all fake, and they're actually imposing real death and destruction, around the world, in pursuit of this fictitious entity called profit, and that's where we're at. So
again, I don't believe in the vaccination trip either, in the way that they're doing it. To me it doesn't make sense a little child come out of a mother's womb and they're shooting this thing up with a combination of chemicals. He can't, nobody knows,
Oh,
Again, when I was a young guy, there was no such thing as autism, and I grew up I was one of the first of the baby boomers. We were flooded all over the place. Everybody knew everybody. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like you didn't know anybody. This didn't happen like this at this level. And so is it vaccinations or, well, by the way, here's something else that's been in my mind that we're going to be writing more about. This whole push toward artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. And it really ties into vaccinations as well, in the sense that, there's other ways to do things. Artificial intelligence will be as great, as sustaining, and as original as artificial flavors, artificial coloring, and artificial foods.
Well,
it'll bring the same results. If you like artificial flavors, you love those artificial colors in your food, and you like artificially grown food, with hormones and whatever else they shove into it, then you're going to love artificial intelligence. It'll be the way for you.
I'm just concerned that they're going to base the intelligence off of the idiots that are running things now. We're going to have
it'll be at that level. It'll be at that level. It'll be at a low level. And matter of fact, it's already happening. the artificial intelligence. You know, I don't know why people call these things smartphones. I call them slave phones.
Right.
It hasn't made anybody smarter that I've seen. If all this technology was so great, why are we in such problems? If education was working, why do we have the problems that exist?
Mm-hmm.
So no, it's not going to do anything more other than just another line of artificial product.
Wow.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, Gerald, thank you so much for being here. Everybody go check out TrendsJournal.com. Let's support Gerald Celente and all of the things that he does. Gerald, thank you so much. You enjoy the rest of your day, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks again for having me. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's, I'll tell you what, that's a lot of information, and I'll tell you, getting an opportunity to spend, it was almost 45 minutes with Gerald Celente, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know what else we could possibly do for you guys out there, but I'm pretty much speechless at this point.